Welcome to this special edition of the New Stack Makers on the Road. We're here in KubeCon North America in
Detroit Rock City!
Discussions from the show floor with technologists giving you their expertise and insights to help you with your everyday work.
Hi, it's B. Cameron Gain here at KubeCon CloudNativeCon in beautiful Detroit. And I'm here today with Yasmin Rajabi, who is Vice President of Product for StormForge. Hi, Yasmin.
Hey, happy to be here.
And I'm here with Patrick Bergstrom.
How are we doing?
CTO of StormForge.
Absolutely.
And we're here today to talk about the automation of optimizing deployments and management of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And I learned recently of how or what a challenge this is. And I was wondering if you could please elaborate on how people are learning the hard way that they're wasting a lot of resources when they're deploying and managing Kubernetes.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that becomes a bigger and bigger challenge the more you grow as an organization. So a lot of the customers that Yasmin's talking with right now and our regular customers, they're deploying into the thousands of namespaces. And so the challenge that we see with organizations of this size, it boils down to day two Kubernetes, right? So You've got your Kubernetes cluster set up, you're running in production, you're deploying workloads, and then as you deploy thousands and thousands of workloads, suddenly trying to manage each workload individually to make sure it has the resources and the memory that it needs becomes a bigger and bigger challenge.
And how does that work, or how does that play out, for example, at a day-to-day level? I mean, whether they're struggling with this, but how are they realizing that they're wasting a lot of resources?
Well, when you ask a developer, for example, who's deploying an application on Kubernetes, how did you set your CPU requests and limits? How did you set your memory requests and limits? Usually I don't know, whatever was there before, or whatever the default for that application was in the docs. Or honestly, an answer I got the other day was, we look at Grafana, we look at where the max is, and then take a guess. And so the challenge is, if you start from there, when you start to scale that out, especially for organizations that are using like horizontal scaling with Kubernetes, then you're taking that problem and you're just amplifying it everywhere. And so when you've hit that complexity at scale, taking a second to look back and say, how do we fix this? You don't want to just arbitrarily go reduce resources, because you have to look at the trade-off of how does that impact your reliability. And so that's where it becomes a really complex, like there's so many settings across all those environments, all those namespaces. It's almost a problem that can only be solved by machine learning, which makes it very interesting.
That's another thing we definitely want to cover. And I find that fascinating how that'll play out, or how that work, the mechanics of that. But how does that realization usually happen? And you mentioned, is there a threshold of namespaces where they suddenly realize, wow, we're wasting a lot of resources?
From my experience, it's usually been the CFO comes knocking, right? And it's like, hey, you spent $10 million on cloud last year. What the heck? And why is that up 60% the year over that? And why is it continuing to grow? What are we going to do about it?
I don't know.
Yeah, and people don't know. They don't know how to solve for it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the CFO comes calling and says, oh, like our cloud bill is high, and they'll have teams that are dedicated to providing the reporting into here are the namespaces that have the biggest waste. But then the challenge is, okay, you're giving it to a developer. How are they going to address that?
Well, in the developer's mind especially too, as like I like to talk about, my past as an SRE, when you give me the controls to a namespace, if I'm deploying an application, I'm going to turn the memory and the CPU as high as I can go because that eliminates my chances of throttling or getting killed. Yeah. And I don't care how much I spend on it, right? Like they're the ones that gave me that knob to turn, so I want to make sure my app works.
Well, the goal is to optimize it as much as you can. Yeah. And as a developer, your goal is not necessarily, or rarely actually, to optimize resources.
Yeah.
And so this helps keep everybody honest in many respects.
Yeah, it does. And it's pain-free because it is automated too. Like Yasmin said, like it's not uncommon for organizations to spin up just massive teams to try to tackle this problem, when in reality, it's a perfect fit for machine learning. The data is very well structured. We can see the usage. We know what settings you're currently using, and then we can do a look back through like our partnership with Datadog, for instance.
Yeah.
We can connect to collect historical data, and then within just hours of us deploying our algorithm into your environment, we have machine learning that's used 2 to 3 weeks worth of data to train that can then automatically set the correct resources for your application, because we know what the application is actually using, and we can predict the patterns, and we know what it needs in order to be successful.
And how many weeks does that have to go back, or how does that work actually? I mean, you have conceptually, you would think you utilize machine learning to take over and to learn what the patterns are and to make forecasts, etc.
Yeah.
And it has to be a very smart MI.
Yep.
So I was curious how that works. I mean, they're realizing, for example, they're wasting a lot of resources. They're learning the hard way, and you're coming in with this machine learning algorithm with your partnership with Datadog.
Yeah.
And how does that work usually?
For us, it's about building confidence with
Yeah.
our users. So we do have an automatic mode where we'll just deploy the configurations and make the changes in real time in production. But if you're a large organization, you want to watch that and see what the machine learning would do. There's still a balance of trust between the computers and the humans. So we provide the recommendations on whatever level of how aggressive you want it to be and how often you would want to deploy it, and let you see that before you actually flip the switch to say, okay, take care of this for me.
It's not the machine taking over the controls.
It is at a certain point.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that work? At what point?
So that's part of our application that we deploy. So we actually have a controller that goes into the customer environment. That's where our recommender is the application that actually makes the recommendations based on the telemetry monitoring that we're watching. We are a machine learning company first. Like we were doing machine learning before we actually got into Kubernetes optimization.
Okay.
We've got 3 PhDs in applied mathematics on staff that are actually writing algorithms for us.
That's fascinating.
That does this, and it's even more fascinating when we talk about our history, because we were doing other things first, and then we migrated to Kubernetes, and we had no idea how to set it up or how to set the right container resources.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of said, oh well, this algorithm that we use for this other thing actually could work for that.
Yeah.
And then they modified it, and we've been iterating on it since then, and that's where we are today.
It's interesting because you mentioned, I think the threshold is around 200 namespaces, et cetera, or is that a random number, or?
Oh no, that's just a random number. Yeah.
But so the machine learning is coming in, and it's extrapolating this data, and I mean, I could not imagine a human or even a human team trying to do this. I mean, it would be hit or miss.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use the word sweet spot, but for this particular application, machine learning looks particularly well.
It's a challenge
applicable.
we hear from a lot of our users where, for example, like we work with a lot of platform engineering teams, and they're providing the tools and the automation for other engineers inside their environment to be able to operate efficiently, both from a resource standpoint and then also be resilient. And our perfect balance is machine learning with automation. It's a couple settings, right?
Yeah.
Your CPU request memory, 5-6 settings. But when you start to multiply that out, but all the namespaces, all the different environments, you start getting in the thousands. And the human brain can't figure out how to set all of those settings at different traffic patterns. And so machine learning handles that and provides the best settings for you. But then you have to now deploy those out, and that's where automation comes in, because for a platform engineering team to be able to deploy that out still takes a lot of time. You wouldn't want to manually do it, so we provide the automation to actually push out those settings.
It seems that automation aspect is critical.
Oh yeah.
And I was wondering how you could please just explain what you mean in this context for the automation.
Of like how it actually works?
Yeah, how does it work? And maybe you could, if you have an example, like a customer example of how you really save somebody.
We do, yeah, absolutely. And with how it actually works, we have a custom-built controller that extends the Kubernetes SDK. And so we integrate very heavily into Kubernetes. In fact, we have, I think it's among the largest density of CKA certified engineers work for StormForge of almost any other company. We're a very small startup, but the percentage is very high. In fact, I think our entire sales team is all CKA certified. It's one of the requirements for working with us. And so our controller is, like I said, it's purpose-built to basically update Kubernetes and say, hey, swap out these resources using those native APIs that Kubernetes makes available.
And we also often hear from organizations that are like, I have my own CI/CD pipeline, so I want you to use my automation. So we can just export our recommendations as a YAML config, and then you deploy that and use your own processes.
Yep.
Good. So you're not locked into the automation aspect.
No, certainly
Exactly.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
Could you please maybe walk me through an example of how you helped somebody? Is there a specific example?
Recently we had a big product launch, so this customer is mentioned there, and we've been working with them. They're a large SaaS company, and they have very bursty workload. So as a team, they had been doing horizontal scale, and their platform team was kind of dealing with this problem now. We're heavily over-provisioned, but we also need to be able to support that burstiness in our traffic patterns.
Yeah.
And so they knew there was optimization opportunities, but they didn't know how to tune the settings so that when the burst did come, they could actually handle it. And so we've been working with them to use the machine learning to come up with the optimal settings and then have them deploy it out automatically so that they can prepare for those bursts and then also scale down and reduce their requests, set their HPA to be the most optimal from a resource perspective, so they're scaling appropriately and they can still handle those bursts. And they saw a savings of 60% on their first app that they deployed.
60% of resources, or how?
Resource reduction, yep.
Wow, congratulations.
It's a lot, yeah. And that's typical. Like, that's not an edge case either.
No,
And that's the interesting thing about the new product launch that she was just talking about is we started out doing vertical scaling, right? And so we have machine learning that will basically figure out the correct size for your pod. It's very much like the VPA, except backed by machine learning.
Yeah.
The latest product launch, though, that we just announced is we actually now work with the VPA and the HPA, so we can do vertical and horizontal scaling together at the same time, so you're not trading one for the other.
Right.
And I think it was our partner Datadog just released that survey. What was it? It was like 40...
I think less than 40% use HPA, less than 1% use VPA.
And nobody uses them together.
Yep.
Wow. Was that often asked for, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think the challenge that users had that when they asked us to kind of work with them to build this out is that horizontal scale makes more sense. You know, in the traditional world, you would add more things. When you needed more things, you'd remove more things. So the HPA makes sense. But from a vertical scale, you have to really understand how your application works. And so being able to right size and then scale it was difficult because of all of the settings involved. So users wanted a way to be able to do both vertical efficiently and then scale it horizontally as their traffic needs it.
I'm under the impression that this is particularly well adapted for SaaS vendors.
Absolutely.
It is, but it's honestly even just great for if you're running Kubernetes on-prem, you don't want to go, you have to physically go buy hardware and extend your data center. And so we can help. We've been helping our customers make more use of what they've already deployed. So existing on-prem data centers.
And the 60% number there is critical too. Like the last organization that I worked for, we had multiple data centers and 2 or 3 of them were packed to the gills. Like we were talking about having to build another data center or figure out where do we move our compute to. Yeah. And imagine being able to reduce your data center consumption by 60% and freeing up all that extra capacity. You've now added 5 to 6 years to the life of your data center before you have to think about, adding another data center or completely changing your model by bursting into the cloud or...
Yeah, I mean, if you're building a data center that you don't have to build.
Yeah, that's almost $1 billion these days to build a new data center.
I'm wondering too, as this is deployed and used, et cetera, where do you see this going?
Ooh. That's a product question, I think.
Well, I think where we look out to is how we can extend our optimization to more things. So whether it's custom metrics that you want to be able to tweak and tune and get recommendations on, or kind of moving up the stack, or even just kind of extending what we do to pull in more platforms. So for example, we partner with Datadog and Prometheus today, but additional observability platforms from ingesting it. We're available on the AWS Marketplace, but showing up in more areas so that it makes it super easy as a part of your deployment to just, optimization is one step in that deployment.
And it should be a default step, I think, in everyone's deployment, whether you're using like Amazon's EKS solution or AKS with Azure. Optimization is one of those critical tools that unlocks additional developer and engineer capability that they don't have the time for today. Never mind the fact that I don't know of anybody that wants to wake up every day and go tune Kubernetes resources for their full-time job, as our CEO likes to say. But
yeah, absolutely. And that's something that they're not there to do in their minds, but it's essential and interesting.
And even if you did do that and you had a team that was dedicated to that, you're talking about maybe addressing each application once a year in a cycle, whereas with a machine learning solution like ours, you could literally do it every 5 minutes if you wanted to.
Let the machine do the work
exactly.
that people don't want to do.
Absolutely.
Excellent. This is B. Cameron Gain signing off in Detroit at KubeCon CloudNativeCon. And I would like to thank Patrick Bergstrom, CTO of StormForge, and Yasmin Rajabi, Vice President of Product, StormForge, for taking the time to speak with me. I really found this fascinating.
Thanks
you.
so much for having us.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.